Okay, welcome to the Anti-Occult-Cast, number 32, I believe this is already. We lost a bunch of episodes. I was doing a review of Stranger Things, and I got really frustrated because I had some technical difficulties, and then some personal things happened, and the holidays happened, so been very busy, and but it's really great to get back into the swing of things. I hope everybody in the audience has had a happy New Year and a happy Merry Christmas and our holiday season, no matter what you celebrate. I think it's important to take part in some sort of prayer and some sort of good ritual towards for hope and for change, because we're really it's a battlefield. It's spiritual warfare out there every day, and that's what this podcast is about. And we're also, I'll read occult texts sometimes, and I will review them. But I am an anti-occultist, meaning that basically I'm here to look at the occult with a critical eye, and I'm against secrecy. I think secrets are they can only be justified under very, very difficult circumstances. So what this channel seeks to do is to find occult information from history and from all different traditions, spiritual traditions and so forth, and to find commonalities and patterns in these traditions that people might not know of, and to educate the listenership and to hopefully entertain and hopefully learn something about numerous topics. And we have some really great guests. And tonight we have another good guest. First time he's on the show, but hopefully looking forward to having him on as a regular guest. And that's he's an author. Actually, Ken Ami, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit for our audience, and welcome to the Anti-Occult-Cast.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm very pleased to be here with you and your audience as well.
Right.
Yes.
Now you've written how many books have you written? You've published.
I haven't counted lately, but let's estimate it 20.
Wow, 20. Oh, that's pretty good. That's quite a bit, because I was originally doing some research. I'm like, oh gee, I knew about a couple of books that you've written. My friend John Erasmus did a review of what was it, 50 Shades of Grey Aliens, which I thought was very good. And then you've done a lot of interviews with my colleague and friend William Ramsey, who
Oh yes, love William.
yeah, and he's a great guy, and I've been on his show. He's been he's been on here quite a bit, and we're always in contact, which is great, because he's a really great guy, and so
He's the real deal.
yeah, he is, and he does really courageous work, and
Yes.
And he sticks to the facts, and he's he doesn't like BS, so it's very good, and it's a very good group of solid researchers and like-minded folks. And William would always mention you. He's like, oh, you should talk to my friend Ken Ami, and this guy Ken Ami. And I said, yeah, I've listened to his very interesting work, and so I thought, and then my friend John did a good book review of your 50 Shades of Grey Aliens book, which I thought was was a very catchy title and all that. So
John didn't think so.
well, he just thought it was. He thought, it's a funny title. I think
Yes.
I think he probably found it pretty funny. But it's silly in that way. But it's not a bad title, but it's a catchy one. It's actually pretty good.
Sure.
So now in that, so let's go in. So you're an author. You do a lot of research. You published a lot. What got you into these subjects that you write about? And first of all, like what other topic? What are the topics that you cover? And because it's a wide range, and you know,
Yes.
what got you on this path, and all that.
Well, I would take my story way, 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 way back as to, well, let me just mention that I wasn't born in this country, so the country I'm from, we didn't have the tooth fairy. We had the teeth mice.
Hmm.
They're just the knockoff version, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so when I was a little kid, I found that the teeth mice didn't actually exist. And that, I believe I can trace way back to when I was a little kid learning that. That made me an instant skeptic.
Hmm.
And by skeptic, I mean a true and honest skeptic.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people who call themselves skeptics, they're really cynics.
Yeah.
And yeah, so a skeptic will say, I will not believe until, and the cynic says, I will not believe, period.
Mm-hmm.
Right, in a manner of speaking. And so that kind of led me into a lifelong pursuit of seeking to ascertain the truth. And so when I was around sixth grade, I would constantly go down to the local library, and my interests were reading about witchcraft and cryptozoology and UFOs and aliens. That was my
Hmm.
main interest, all the mysteries of the world, essentially.
Hmm.
And so you can see by the kind of things I've ended up writing about, which covers all that and more,
Mm-hmm.
why I continued just going after these issues and basically writing and sharing information as I learn it and as I
Mm-hmm.
systematize it in my own mind.
Right.
Writing for me is very therapeutic.
Yes.
It helps me, it forces me to express my thoughts in a concise, clear way.
Yeah. Yeah, I always think I'm under the philosophy of that the language is a sacred thing. It's almost like the logos of God, if you will, and
True.
it's almost tapping into that. And so, when I always think of the Dead Sea Scrolls, and when I went and viewed them in Balboa Park in San Diego, quite a few years back now, but I was this idea was there because they had the scrolls out, and the word for God was not spelt out. Of course, it was three dots, and I thought, that's exactly right, because the idea is that once you place a name on the infinite, on the ineffable, basically, it does subtract away from its grandeur or glory in some sense. So the art of writing is a very sacred and uh, well, it's not as much practice anymore, especially handwriting and so forth. I've always had a very huge respect for writing. When I was a kid, I would go downstairs. My grandfather had a old Smith Corona typewriter, and I would play on it almost like it was a piano or something like that, and I would imitate who was it? Mark Twain, and I would write, and I would work on my own stories, and I used that typewriter all up and through high school. So it was, everyone else had word processors, or I loved my typewriter. I loved the clangs, and also, you did have to, there's something to that mental discipline of being concise and coherent and articulate and saying your point and having things planned out, because you really, there's no delete button on a typewriter, really. So, but it's such, and when I went to a word processor, it was just like, oh geez, this is easy. So, but I know that feeling. I know it's definitely therapeutic for me. Reading is also very much a meditation for me. I think there came a point for me when I was I must have been 19. I must have been a freshman in college, and I was doing some introduction to sociology work. And, I remembered, I think it was Maslow's hierarchy I was studying. And I realized that, I had some sort of idea that wasn't in the book and it was expanded upon. And it was such an aha moment that everything around me, I can't, it was really a mystical experience. Everything around me turned like golden and was shining bright, and I had this incredible sense of inspiration in that, there were so many academic corridors where I could go down and really apply myself and get some really interesting thoughts that had never been, I thought until that point, never really been thought about and charted. And so I really respect the anybody who strives for the truth and has to and doesn't really have a filter on what they read as input and output. I mean, I don't think books or words in themselves are evil. I think, sometimes people can put spells, obviously, onto books and things like that. But I think that, we need to read, like you said, like, the paranormal aspects. I was very drawn to that. Cryptozoology with Loch Ness Monster was a big one for me. I was very interested in pyramid and things like, very mysterious sort of, what you see on like Ancient Aliens nowadays and paranormal radio shows. And it turns out that, it's its own giant field now with personalities and radio show hosts and all this stuff. But, and what they are saying is, sort of dangerous. And I've come to my own sort of realizations on all that. But, so, okay, so you've been at this for quite a long time. Yeah. Go ahead.
Just take a step back. I think what you were initially expressing, the Taoist, ended up expressing as the Tao that can be named is not the eternal Tao.
That's right. The first sentence from the Tao Te Ching. That's right.
Yeah, and then there's an entire book to name the Tao.
Yeah,
but,
right.
And then, but of course in Exodus records for us that God does express his name, which is known as the Tetragrammaton. But he goes on to say to not make any images of him, because no image could possibly contain his grandeur, his Godhead. But yeah, I do agree with you about those aha moments, because for me, if I get a dry as dust book on whatever it might be, theology, let's say, in my hands, and I'm conducting research, I literally consider that a form of worship.
Yeah.
Straight up.
Yeah.
And then there are those moments where things come together in your head that, these, like, I think of it as puzzle pieces, right? They're all over the place. And when they start coming together and you finally get, like, that corner one that makes you fit 100 more in line, it's just so wonderful.
Yeah. Yep. So, okay. So, when did you first? What was your first book that you published? What was the title and what was it about?
Oh, well, that's right on key, because that was the Apocryphal Jesus.
Oh, really?
Expressed some interest in it. Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Okay. So, in what year was that published?
Well, okay. Let me say that I self-published.
Right.
And I have a love-hate relationship with self-publishing.
Oh, yeah.
I love it because I'm in charge of the book, and anytime I want to update something or fix it, I can just do it by myself, no problem. But I hate it because there's absolutely no marketing.
Yeah, I understand.
Unless you want to spend a tremendous amount of money in marketing.
Right.
So in that sense, it's very frustrating and difficult, because there's no media image behind it. And if you ever look at publishing houses, the cost of publishing a book is just absolutely outrageous.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking thousands of dollars for the author to spend, by the way, the author.
Well, yeah, and then it's very risky. You know, aside from very, very, very few authors, and even them, take the top authors like Neil Gaiman, Stephen King. You know, even they have to take risks. Every book it's even though they're obviously going to sell books, it's a risky thing. You know, it's always a risk, and there's nothing more risky than that. I was publishing through a press called Aloris Aloris Publishing, and I have a friend, John, not Rasmus, but John Evans, who he's quite a bit younger than me, but he's 22 years old in graduate school, and he's sort of like a blind prophet. He's very he's at Fordham now, but he's doing a PhD program. He has like a Genius grant, and he's been on EWTN, and he's written over 15, 16 books by the time he was 21. And some of them, a lot of them were self-published, but a lot of them were through this press agency. And unfortunately, you know, after I think about 6-7 years, they had to shut down shop because it was just, you know, the market wasn't there for books. People aren't reading as much as they at least used to. I think we're coming into a different type of consumerism that's being pushed, where everything is, you know, visual and immediate, and you know, the attention span isn't there. It's, you know, I think the average, you know, if you look at YouTube statistics, for example, the average person will spend 3 minutes on a website and maybe 20-something seconds on a YouTube video. You know, it's ridiculous, the attention span. I remember watching a recent French film.
I'm sorry, what were you saying? I saw a squirrel running by and I had lost my attention there.
No worries. So, no, I said that...
No, I know, I'm just kidding. I'm putting you on.
No, okay, so yeah, attention spans. So yeah, no, I mean, but it's true, you know, so these, you know, I think that's also part of the discipline that writing and reading, you know, to be a good writer, you have to be a good reader. And there's a discipline there, a quieting of the mind, and really letting the muse flow through, or God, or whatever you want to call it. What are your, okay, let's get into that book then, The Apocryphal Jesus. I find that very interesting.
Right, so let me take a step back. So I'm a Messianic Jew.
Okay.
I would imagine your audience would know what that means.
I think I do, but why don't you tell everybody?
Yeah. Basically, I'm a Jew by birth, and you know, I attended private Jewish school, had my bar mitzvah, and all of this. And then at the age of 27, I came to accept that Jesus is the Messiah. And actually, I ended up writing a book, Is Jesus the Messiah? And I called it A Judaism versus Judaism Debate, because I wanted to prove from Jewish sources that you could prove that Jesus is the Messiah. But little did I know that I would eventually have to not only deal with the issue of whether Jesus is the Messiah, but to deal with the issue of whether Jesus existed at all.
Right.
I mean, that's a whole other level right there.
Yeah.
And so this is, when you get into historical Jesus issues, there are various levels or categories of genre that you get into, and one of them was the claim that, well, by golly, you know, if you only would read these non-canonical gospels, then you would really understand who Jesus is, and you wouldn't take the New Testament as being gospel, pun intended. And so this is really what I did in this book, which is to read, I believe the end count was 35 apocryphal texts.
Right, yeah, about that, right.
And I wanted to make it simple for a person to look at each one of those texts, know what was in there immediately, where it agrees with the New Testament, where it disagrees, and some of what I call unique features, like something it might state that is not in the New Testament. Might be true, might be false, but it's certainly unique. And so, if I may, I'll review the basic genre that we're dealing with.
Yeah, please.
One of them is the infancy Gospels. And these are about the bad boy Jesus. And I mean literally bad and literally boy, because these claim to recount his life before the age of 12. So he's very young, and he's generally extremely nasty, using his miraculous powers to literally have people drop dead. And
right.
You know, very, like the whole village is terrified of him. And so the bad boy Jesus in the infancy Gospels. Then you have what's known as gospel harmonization genre. And this is basically trying to match up what the New Testament is telling you chronologically, and maybe they try to add some details here and there. Again, whether those details are true or not, reliable or not, that's a separate issue, but that's the genre.
Right.
Then there's the sayings genre.
Yes, the sayings skew.
Right, and I think of the sayings genre as basically the original Twitter. Right? Because Jesus is true. Basically, he's a disembodied voice, and it's literally just one-liners.
Right.
That's all it is, the saying genre, whether it's about Jesus or there's other figures about whom saying texts have been written, and that's all it is. It's just one-liners. It's uncontextual, literal, just...
And that's like Elaine Pagels and the whole Gospel of Judas people and that whole line of thought, right? And then those Gnostic Gospels that of Elaine Pagels, and I think James Robinson, I think, carried out the translation effort, and yeah, very familiar. So go on, sorry. Yep.
Then there's the Acts genre, and that's just very much like the Book of Acts in the New Testament. It's just basically a chronology of what the apostles were doing after Jesus' ascension. And then finally, there's the apocalyptic genre.
Right.
And these are generally very, very inventive, very imaginative, very vivid.
Right.
And these are where you get all these wild and crazy, completely unbiblical depictions of hell as some sort of torture chamber where Satan and his demons get to have fun for all eternity doing what they love most. And, you know, all these creepy medieval paintings and Dante's Inferno and all that stuff. It's completely unbiblical, but this is where you get it from.
Right.
Apocalyptic genre, And so that was what this book was. Just me trying to provide a easy to read, user-friendly reference. And if you hear about any of these books, you can look it up, and within a couple pages, you know what they're all about. That's
awesome. That's quite a service. Because I'll tell you what, I don't know if you've noticed this, but I've noticed it within my own sort of community here on YouTube that we do have, that we that I'm a part of, I would say. There are some people who like the work of a guy named John Lamb Lash, and I don't know if you've heard of that guy, but he takes a look at the Gnostic Gospels, and basically, it turns it into Gnosticism in the old sense, which is to say that Yahweh actually is the demiurge and is the real Satan of the whole. He's kind of the Matrix architect, if you will. Very Gnostic idea there, and he's kind of controlling. And in fact, that's picked up, and you can follow that train of thought. And people like the Temple of Set's work and stuff like that. That's the philosophy of their side, of that side anyway. But anyway, I find it very interesting that these people, they think that that God that's not God, that the serpent only offered consolation and showed human beings the light, and it's all this hatred for the original monotheism, for God, basically, of the Bible. I've never seen anything like this, and it's insane. But people follow it, and they think, Sophia's correction, because what happened was Gaia Sophia had to do this thing with all this, And yet these are the same people that are doubting that there was a historic Jesus Christ, you know, or Yeshua. Yeah.
I term it a substandard double standard.
Wow, that's good. That's a good way to put it. Yeah, absolutely.
So because of all these genre of New Testament Apocrypha, if you have, let's say for any one of them, you have one fragmented manuscript that's from hundreds of years after Jesus, that counts as absolute truth.
Yeah.
But for the New Testament, by golly, you better have a video recording of the apostles writing it with their own hand, or else it doesn't matter that we have almost 6,000.
Oh, God.
That's irrelevant.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter when they were written. It doesn't matter how many we have.
Right.
And so that's the substandard double standards.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is one aspect of dealing with the historical Jesus issue. So to go back to the beginning, generally when people will tell me that Jesus never existed, initially I do not tackle it as a historical problem. I tackle it initially as a logical problem. Because if you say Jesus never even existed, that's what's known as a positive affirmation. It means that you are claiming to possess knowledge that proves that Jesus never existed. And so initially, I will ask for the evidence. And inevitably, the reply I get is, well, you believe he existed, so you have to prove it. The burden of proof is on you, and I can't prove a negative. Okay, if you can't prove a negative, then don't positively affirm that Jesus never existed. You are forced into an agnostic position.
That's right.
And so instantly, within one single sentence, they'll say, well, okay, maybe some guy named Jesus did exist, but he wasn't the Son of God, he didn't do miracles, he wasn't, this and that. And so that all falls apart essentially instantly.
Okay, yeah.
Right. And so then after that logical hurdle, then you get into the historical issue.
Right.
And that's where you suddenly encounter a whole other range of historical Jesus issues. So initially, the historical Jesus proper. So basically, a good historian is really just like a reporter. Their job is to say, here's the information, and I'm walking away. Take it, do with it what you will. People are going to make with it, from it what they will. But that is a historian's job, is just literally to say, here's the facts. And that's it.
Yep.
Okay? And so that would be, did a person named Jesus actually exist? How could we prove that? Is there proof? And that's like very basic. It's not theological at that point. It's just basic, just the facts, man.